Today, join Zach and I as we present my top 10 list of fantasy reads you can easily get completely lost in. Amazing fantasy reads that won't hurt your brain, but may see you watch a whole week slip by before you come up for air.
Okay. Hi there, and welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son sit down and talk about fantasy books. I'm the son of that equation, Zach.
And I'm the father, Jim. Thanks for joining us here today as we're just going to have fun talking about some great books. It's my list, so maybe they're my great books. Zach is going to be color commentary today.
I've seen your list today.
You
I
have.
don't hate your list.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that. Some of these books, a lot of these books you've read already.
Many of them I've either read or plan to.
If you enjoy this list today, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. We really appreciate all the subscribers who've been coming along here. We have a goal to hit at least 3,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And we're over halfway between 2,000 and 3,000 now.
I love it.
You know, let's blow past it. Come on, people. Sign up. All right. Talking about this list. My context here was trying to think of books. Well, let me not get out of order here. A great fantasy book sucks you in, okay? It allows you to escape from reality for a while.
What is fantasy if not escapism?
Right. I want to be swept away to magical worlds of daring and adventure and yeah. So for today's top 10 list, I'm presenting the best 10 books, in my opinion, that are easy to get into, but which completely transport you into another world. Before you know it, hours have gone by and you still just want to keep reading this book.
I have to ask, does that disqualify anything that takes place kind of in our world or hidden world?
No. Wouldn't have to. It's just, what's the experience like when you're getting into it and what it does for you?
So just because it takes you to another world doesn't mean it's taking you to another world.
Correct. These books, therefore, though, won't be the deepest or most challenging of fantasy reads, because I was trying to focus on things that are very accessible and very immersive. So it's not hard to get into them necessarily, and then once you're in, you are just sucked in and just loving everything you're experiencing. They're very captivating reads where you can lose hours because you just don't want to let go now. You've totally absorbed in the fantasy. So I do have 10 for us here, and I've ranked them from the least accessible and immersive to the most accessible and immersive. And I got to keep repeating accessible and immersive, because if I made a list of the top 10 most accessible fantasy books, it would be different than this list.
Fair.
Or the most immersive, it would be different. This is a balance. There's some tension here of accessible and deeply immersive. I challenged myself that way. I almost made two totally different lists. But
yeah, I see where you're at.
I
understand what you're shooting for, and I'll reserve my judgment as to whether or not you succeeded.
Obviously, my list is influenced by A, what I've read, and B, what I like. And so Zach will get to comment, therefore, on these as we go. I'm going to give you the basic details, teeny little synopsis, and then, what's good about the book? What is it known for, and why do I think it's worthy to be on this list? So here's number 10. At the bottom is The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, published all the way back in 1977. This is epic fantasy where a reluctant hero must wield a legendary sword to defeat a dark warlock threatening the world. It's praised for the classic quest, a very familiar style which makes it quite accessible in this version of storytelling.
Certainly, if you're already familiar with fantasy tropes, this isn't going to be anything crazy new in that sense, and there is that.
Yep. So just to finish the introduction on this list, it's when I'm thinking accessible and immersive, it's very familiar, this quest style, and pretty friendly for a beginning reader. But it's number 10 because it's not as compelling and gripping if you've already read a lot of fantasy. This is a great, I'm early in the fantasy genre. You're going to love this book. This is a great entry into getting into more. But once you've done more, you're like, oh, okay, this was pretty basic.
Is it cheating or giving it the credit that it's due to get this number 10 slot? That this is 1 out of 34 books, technically?
No,
Like,
it's
is
not
it more
cheating.
immersive because the world is so expansive?
No, just the story by itself is very immersive, and there's some great world building that goes on that you're getting sucked into along the way, plus very engaging characters. Yeah, if you like it, there's so much more to enjoy. Just the initial trilogy is a lot of fun, and you could stop at the end of the first trilogy. That's what I like about the Shannara books is you've got trilogies and quartets all the way through where you can just read a chunk at a time. The other thing I like about the Shannara series is it's done and now it's not done. Because this is funny. Terry Brooks decided, even though he'd officially finished it,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't end the story. He was just like, I'm good here. It's a good spot to stop finally, after like 40 years of writing these things. Then he decided, no, I'm going to write more. And he started writing one more book with an idea of a new trilogy, not extending the story, just writing about some characters and stuff in the midst of things that were referenced, but he never dove deep into. And as he finished that book, he went, man, I'm just not as good at writing this stuff anymore. I'm getting too old. So he has made an announcement, like, I don't know, within the last month. He has handed the torch over to a new writer who will be continuing to write Shannara books, and Brooks will be consulting. But this author is going to bring her young, fresh perspective to writing now.
So we might be looking at another 30 plus
We
books.
could. We could. And I have read them all. I love them all. Yeah. And you still have this on your TBR,
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm
You
still
haven't
getting
touched
to
it
it
yet.
eventually. It might be something I shift into once I've gotten through all of the Realm of the Elderlings,
Mm,
which for me is a similar. You got trilogies and quartets, and you're getting
yeah.
through more expensive things. Or I might push off Shannara and get back into Rift War.
Shannara or Rift War, it's hard to go wrong there. I'd say Rift War is probably better than Shannara overall writing, but I love both series and I've read them both, and they're both over 30 books. Yes. All right, number 9, Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence.
Okay,
Published in
okay.
2011. This is grimdark fantasy where a ruthless prince leads a brutal path to power while grappling with his own dark past. It's
Does
praised. Go ahead.
sorry, keep going. I shouldn't keep interrupting the intro.
It's praised for its dark tone and its morally complex protagonist who some people absolutely hate. Why it's number 9 on my list? It's sharp and addictive if you click with the dark tone of the book, which I did. And there's a trilogy. This is book 1. I plowed through them all. It's less accessible for more casual fantasy fans or people who really like more comfortable reading, because this is not comfortable. It's grimdark. It's gritty. There are ugly things that happen here. But if you're into that, you are sucked in.
Yeah, I think this starts a trend that might continue in the list a little bit, in that this list only applies if you read Grimdark. Uh,
Hmm.
there's too many Grimdarky entries on here that if that makes it not approachable to you, you have to ignore those entries
You'll
on this
skip
list.
over those, yeah.
That is something that would make it not accessible. I haven't read this. Do you consider it to be accessible Grimdark, though?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The writing is really nice. Easy to get into and to be wanting to know what happens next. This was my first book that I read by Mark Lawrence. I've gone on to read 10 now, and there are more on the list. But it's because this book was that good. I was like, what else has he written? I need more. I need more. Number 8, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Book 1 of The Wheel of Time,
Mm-hmm.
published in 1990. Totally epic fantasy, where in this book, a young farm boy is swept into a world saving quest as dark forces rise and ancient prophecies awaken. It's praised for its rich world building and its expansive character arcs. It fits this list because of the deep immersion for epic fantasy lovers. There's so much to get into in this series, and it all starts in this book. But It is a slower, more detailed entry point into the series. So I'd say this is one of the weaker books in the series, but there's enough here that if it's hitting the right tone for you, the right notes, you're going to want to keep going. And a lot of people have,
I love The Wheel of Time. We know this. We've talked about this. I don't know
obviously.
if I would have put it on this list. Um,
Really.
if only because a lot of what you're trying to hit on this list, I think, doesn't really start to blossom until a couple books in. It doesn't really grip you your first time reading it. On a reread, this book deserves to be possibly higher on the list because it's still very approachable. It's still a little bit classic comfort fantasy, but has so much in there, has so much peppered in. It is so gripping and immersive,
Mm.
but not the first time you read this book.
Part of why this book hits the list is it sucked your mother in. And she was not an epic fantasy reader at all. She decided she ought to read this book because we were going to be watching the TV show and
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, and she ought to know where this is coming from. And of her own choosing, after reading this book, she needed to keep going. She got sucked into these characters, this world, and of course has read the entire Wheel of Time now, of which we are very proud of her.
You know what? I will acquiesce and say, Mom, you put this book on the list.
There you go. Number 7, Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. This is book 1 of the Dragon Riders of Pern, published back in 1968. It is science fantasy. This is about a woman who becomes a dragon rider and leads a battle against a deadly extraterrestrial threat. Although that's really almost more than just this one first book is about. Okay.
It is.
But it is about this woman
Mm-hmm.
and the beginning of her journey. So it is praised for the strong female lead that you get to experience and see, and the innovative blending of science fiction and fantasy. Anne McCaffrey, before this book, was just known as a science fiction author at a time when that was very male dominated, but she was a successful science fiction author already. And then she was like, here, hold my beer. And she writes this science fiction fantasy blend that's some of the best that she's got out there. Why it's on this list? Well, conceptually, it's strong. The things she's bringing into the story, and you get sucked up into what's happening in this world, and especially this character and what she does, the resilience, the grit. You emotionally connect with what's happening. Now, people will sometimes note, it's written in 1968, it's a bit dated,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't really have that issue. I find it still very readable and definitely transportive. You are in this world and the time just flies by. You're totally immersed. It really has high points for immersion value. I think it was ahead of its time. Even if you might feel dated, I'm like, yeah, but this strong female lead and then all the stuff that's going on in the story, it was ahead of its time. Okay, what do you think?
I think this hits really nicely on the tonal note of not needing to work very hard to read these. This is a very casual sit back. The events happen. Yeah, there's more going on, but it unveils and builds a broader world very subtly, but not in sneaky hidden ways, not in aha clever moments. Just rather, it is unfolding different sections as you need them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's never going to be my favorite series of all time, partially because of that. But it
Okay.
does sit in the like, okay, you need a refresher. You just finished book 7 of Malazan. Give your brain a break. Go read some Dragon Riders of Pern.
This series has almost 30 books. I think it's like 26 books. I've only read the first 14. The core story is done by like book 11, and then there's more stories that can be told. So that's why I've only got through 14. I do want to finish one day. But this is another book that partly makes this list because I recommended it to your mother, and she loved it. And she read this. She flew through the first chunk of the series, and she got to Merida, and she did not like it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then I was like, okay, so that didn't hit, but don't give up. So then she read the next one, Nerilka. And she was like,
I
"Oh,
also
okay."
wouldn't have liked that one, to
No,
be
no,
honest.
she liked that one. She's like, "Oh, okay, that
Why?
was a lot better." But that still is where she stopped at this point. She has not gone on, so she's like missing some of the best stuff still to come. I need to nudge her. Number 6 on my list is Tagana by Guy Gavriel Kay. Now, this is the one and only standalone fantasy novel. I love trilogies, I love series, but this one, all by itself. All you got to read is Tagana, and it will suck you in. It was written back in 1990. It's fantasy. You could say epic fantasy, but usually that's epic, like lots and lots of books. It's just one book, but it has that same kind of feel. This focuses on a group of rebels who seek to restore the memory and identity of their nation, a nation that was conquered and then erased by magic. So no one even knows it ever existed. It was like
Interesting.
the best nation of all. Nope, gone. Wow. And there's some really powerful themes that get in here, very emotional. It's praised for Kay's writing, lyrical prose, beautiful writing, which I had previously read his Fionavar Tapestry, which has also very quality prose, and I just didn't like the story.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried one more and I went, oh, this story I like. This is so good. Why it's on this list is partly the prose, the quality of the writing. It's very enjoyable reading, but not highbrow. It's still very easy to read. You engage with it without a lot of difficulty. It is a little slower at first to get into, but it's not something you struggle with. You're just like, okay, you're developing things. Can we get a little further? And then you hit the payoff. And I'm like, whoa. When the world blows up on you and you get to understand what he was doing, what he was building, and where he was going with characters. There's exceptional depth in the quality of this story and the plot that he packs in. And I think a quality standalone fantasy novel has to do that. You have to hit big. K hits big. So, yeah, you haven't read this, so you can't really say anything.
No, I have read the Fiona of Our Tapestry, so I can speak to Guy Gavriel Kay's writing style, which for me makes this book probably a little less approachable, especially if I'm suggesting things to other people. There is a caveat to that. If you come to me and tell me that your favorite fantasy books ever are the Lord of the Rings, and you just get really frustrated that people don't write like Tolkien used to. People don't write like that
Mm.
anymore. Where is the beauty and the poetry to the
That's a huge
language of
compliment to Guy
writing?
Gabriel K.
And
Yeah,
Guy Gavriel Kay is a spiritual successor in my mind. The
I
way
like
that
that.
he writes is intentionally trying to be a little pretty and flowery without being just lost in that. It's a little
Tigana
bit of
evokes
a
that. Yeah,
love language to language whilst writing a fantasy story.
there we go.
It doesn't always work for me, but if that's your cup of tea, that's what you're going to find.
I think mom would like this one, your mother. But I haven't. I think it might be on the list of books I suggested. I shared that with you, didn't I?
I think so.
Yeah, so you could add things too.
I haven't added things.
All right, number 5. And I thought about this one before I put it on, but I went, no, it's that
Yeah.
good that I want to put it here. Heroes Die by Matthew Woodring Stover. It's book 1 of the 4-book series, The Acts of Cain. This came out in 1998. It's a mashup of
Mm-hmm.
science fantasy and grim dark.
Mm-hmm. Now,
We've got a
justify why this is on your list.
I'm gonna get here. So it's about a futuristic actor where he's in a very sci-fi technical world, but there's a parallel world that's a very classic fantasy style, and these actors go over to the fantasy world and become these characters there. And in this world, his character is a killer. He's an
Mhm.
assassin, basically, and he is really good at what he does. But people in the technical world, they watch these adventures for entertainment.
Mhm.
This is how you entertain the masses. That's the synopsis. There's so much that happens here. It gets so deep and
Mhm.
amazing. So
Mhm.
it's praised for its genre bending concept, its brutal realism with some of the topics
Yeah.
it brings to bear, and just the complexity of the story is incredible. And it gets even more complex as you go forward. Why I put it here at number 5? It's bold, it's intense, its premise very unique. So it's not the easiest entry, but it's amazingly immersive. So the fact
Absolutely.
it's not as accessible as some is overridden by how immersive it is for people who click with it. Okay? So especially if you aren't scared off by grimdark, this is a fresh take on kind of that grimdark style, but broadening into new genre areas. And for me, and I know for you, Zach, we were like, where has this been all our lives? This
Mhm.
was amazing when we'd practically never heard of it before. It could be that for you.
I do love this book. I will almost always recommend this book. I recommended this book to you, even.
Mm-hmm.
You're insane for putting this book on this list.
I would
Um,
never recommend this one to your mother.
Most notably, because you could read this book casually. You could sit back, you could enjoy it,
And
you
be
can go through the
wounded
story.
forever.
I'm just saying, in terms of even if you still enjoy that kind of content, if you enjoy grimdark stories, you could sit back and casually read this book, and you would get an enjoyable story.
Okay.
And you would miss half of what makes this book so good, and the series too. You need to have your brain on and engaged to really engage with this series in the way that I think you should.
Ah, so you think it would work the brain more than things on this list appropriately? Hmm.
Yes, and that's where, do I think it deserves praise? Yes. Do I think it deserves to be recommended? Absolutely. Do I want to recommend it on this list? Maybe not.
All right, Zach's on the record there. There you go. One of our subscribers just found my old video giving the spoiler light review on this book and is like, yeah, I'm about to dive in. Thanks for the recommend. Loved it. I'll check out your other videos as I get through the book. I'm like, yay, that's why we have over 1,000 videos. We want you guys to find these things. All right, number 4, Magician, which in the United States was published as Magician Apprentice and
And
Magician
Magician
Master
Master.
by Raymond E. Feist. It was published back in 1982. This is high fantasy where we've got an orphan, Pug, who becomes a powerful magician in a world that's thrown into interdimensional war. So it's like there's an element of sci fi, except it's done magically. So really, it's just fantasy.
Yeah.
It's praised for its grand scope, this storytelling across 2 different worlds, and an inventive magic system that isn't hard magic, but it's still very creative, introducing some new things. It fits this list because it's still just a classic fantasy adventure. The storytelling is very traditional, very comfortable, easy to follow, but with a sweeping scope and high engagement. You get sucked into Pug's story and you want to know what's next, what's going to happen, along with other characters who are also very important.
This book belongs on this list in the same way that Shannara belonged at number 10. However, it's 100% correct from my reading experience to put it this much higher on the list.
I remember your experience with Magician, that you were surprised. And I think you even commented, I hate that you were right, Dad,
I was surprised that I did enjoy it the way that I did.
because it's so much older.
It doesn't feel as old as it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. All right, number 3, The Name of the Wind.
Are you insane?
Patrick Rothfuss. Nope, hear me out. Hear me out. Publication 2007, genres epic fantasy. This is the story of a gifted young man who recounts his life from orphanhood to legendary wizard. It's praised for its lush prose. I mean, Rothfuss is a master of the written word. And this compelling protagonist, Kvoth, who you just, yeah, you want to read his story. You want to know what's going to happen. Now, why it's on the list? Okay, it takes a little more attention. There's a lot to this story, but it is incredibly immersive. Once you are into this book, you can't put it down. And very emotionally rewarding. There's a lot of payoffs in here. You are very much siding with Kvoth. You're with him. You're getting the highs and the lows as he experiences them, and you don't want the story to end, which thankfully Rothfuss has not yet. There's only 2 books of the trilogy out, and it's been like 13 years. We're waiting for the final book, and we don't know if we'll ever get it. That said, this book by itself is worth the adventure. Now, why am I insane?
Well, I have to give it with a grain of salt here. I haven't read it yet. It's one of the next like 3 in my
Yeah,
TBR.
you own it already. It's sitting on your shelf.
Yeah, it's
This
been
is a
sitting on my shelf for a couple of years.
massive void in your credibility, my son.
No, the reason in which I ask if you're insane is I think the same reason why this is only like number 3. It's not number 1 for you because you do have to think a little bit. It is a heftier book, and I've heard that it is a bit deeper. So I have to just assume it's earned a spot this high because it is so much more immersive than everything else lower on the list. And if that's true, that's totally fine.
Except, again, you haven't read this one, so you don't know where I'm coming from with this exactly, but this is not hard to read. It is very epic, very broad in its style, but it leads you where you need to go. So as you're reading it, it is an accessible read. Surprisingly accessible, in my opinion. Now, maybe that's just because I've read so much fantasy.
It may be because of you and your reader preferences.
The odd thing I find about The Name of the Wind and the Kingkiller Chronicle that it's part of is the style is different than anything else I've read.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I go into it and I'm immersed and I'm loving it. And then when I'm not in it, I'm like, it's okay. I'm reading other things now that I'm enjoying and really loving. But when I'm going to re-enter the Kingkiller Chronicle, it's like I enter into something very different, very unique, not hard to read, very immersive, very self-contained. It's not like other things. It's really hard to describe. And so it should be experienced. And yeah, that's why it's high on my list, because I think people will get it and they will get sucked in. And this is why people love these 2 books so much, even though we don't have the third.
I will concede that I will be willing to eat both my hat and my shoe, even if in a couple of months, when I've finished this book, I am wrong and it deserves to be here. I think it maybe deserves to be a little lower on the list.
I will be very interested in your take on The Name of the Wind when you've read it. Number 2, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, published in 2006. Grimdark fantasy here, so I'll be interested in Zach's thoughts in a minute. We have a barbarian, a torturer, and a nobleman who are drawn into an impending war that they do not fully understand. It's praised for the witty dialogue and the subversion of fantasy tropes. This is one of the earlier grimdark stories. We have a lot of grimdark out now. When this came out, it wasn't the first grimdark, but it was on the early end, and it helped establish what people have come to expect from grimdark fantasy. It's gritty, but it's also very fast paced, and the characters, man, you like these characters. They're very unforgettable. Some of you like them because you hate them.
Some of them are unforgettably unforgivable.
Right? It's easy to slide into this book, and it is hard to put down. So very addictive. Thoughts?
As long as this book is your cup of tea, no, you're right.
You noted that if someone thinks this is their favorite book ever, they need
it's a red
help.
flag. It's a problem. That being said, if the style of book appeals to you, it is very approachable. It's very enjoyable for what it is. You do need to have a little bit of a background in fantasy. You do need to have a little bit of a background in grimdark to really view this in the way that I think you are describing it. But if you have any of that, if this is already your cup of tea, this isn't even your first cup. This is, you've been sipping for a while. You're just keeping going. You're good.
There you go. All right, let's do number 1. And I'm hoping you don't dislike my number 1.
I don't think I dislike your number 1.
My number 1. All right, number 1 is The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks, which is book 1 of the Night Angel trilogy. This book, just like every book in the trilogy, came out in 2008. It was boom, boom, boom. This is epic fantasy. It's got a lot of action to it. It's very action driven. We're not talking deep introspective stuff here. No, we are just
Certainly has
going,
some
going, going.
grimdark elements, though.
Slight grimdark,
It
light
absolutely has.
there. We've discussed this before. It's got a naivete to it a little bit with
If
some of
I
the
have to give trigger
characters.
warnings, though, just keep that in mind.
So we've got a street urchin who is trained as an assassin because he knows an assassin, and he basically latches onto him and says, "Please help me escape the life I have." And the guy takes pity on him. They're in a city that's teeming with corruption and secrets, and it's not a pretty place. It is a dark place. And this is Kylar's opportunity to get out. Not that he can get out. Now you got to go into this to really experience this, but it's praised for its fast pace, a lot of action, and the gritty atmosphere that Brett Weeks has created. Why is it number one on my list? This is quick to get into, darkly addicted. I flew through the trilogy and delivers. I mean, you got constant thrills all through this with some emotional weight. Now, the emotional weight comes more as you keep going through the trilogy, but it's already planting seeds in book one and you are hooked. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, when I saw this was your number one on the list, I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I would have picked it for my number one, but I think it makes sense. I think it is a delightful journey that, again, you have to be willing for certain darker elements sometimes here and there, but you'll find out really, really early on whether or not this book is going to be a problem for you. Yeah. And as long as it's not, you're going to just immerse yourself into this world, enjoy it, and want more.
Yeah. It just gets those top notch points for the balance of accessibility. It's not hard to read with immersion.
It's a very direct style of writing. It's not hidden behind kind of an intellectual barrier or anything like that. It's just giving it to you in a relatively provocative but enjoyable manner.
Yeah. So this is a trilogy. Then there is a sequel series that's going to be coming out. We have book one called Night Angel Nemesis, and it's another one I featured on my recent episode of books that I may have misjudged and maybe need to try again at some point, because I don't think it was what I was looking for, but I don't think the book's really as bad as I've given it crap for.
I'll admit it may be a little bit bloated, which was a lot of people's problem with it, but I do think it got a lot of unfair hatred for being compared to the previous series and to his other series that I've now also read.
Lightbringer.
I might recommend waiting to do a reread until the next book comes out.
That's my plan. Yeah, freshen up and then move right into book two. Yep. All right, that's the list. 10 books that I think are a beautiful balance of accessible and immersive. What do you think?
I have an important note, because what do I think? I think you've clearly shown us what your list is.
Totally.
Which is good, fair, and fine. However, you don't always read things that are the most accessible, and therefore your accessibly immersive examples miss out on things that are very immersive but highlight into the more accessible. For example, for me, and I'm not going to list specific books, I'm just going to list a couple of categories.
Okay.
YA books in general can have some great immersive qualities, but by their very nature will be more accessible. Okay. And there was not a single book on this list that I would count as YA.
Nope. I was really thinking adult literature. Yeah.
I also think romantasy,
as
much as you do not like it,
I knew that
lend itself to this category of book very, very well.
Oh, man.
So the best of romantasy books should be on this list. And maybe we'll make another video at some point where I bring in other options that don't fit my dad's reading preferences.
I certainly said it was influenced by what I've read, and I avoid romantasy. Yeah. So yeah, perhaps we'll get Zach's top 10 at some point. Thank you for adding those thoughts, Zach. They are valid.
I was sitting here waiting for you to say, even though they're wrong.
So what do you think, viewers? Give us your thoughts on my top 10. books that you think, well, no way, they shouldn't be on a top 10. They're not nearly accessible or immersive enough. Books you would substitute, things you think would be great there. I want to hear it. We want to hear it. Put them on there. And any of your thoughts about these particular books, reasons you love them, reasons you think they are perfect for the list, put those down as well. And look in the show notes for other ways you can interact with Zach and I. Invitation to our Discord server. Come join us, where we just talk about books and cats and weird stuff that we're doing and whatever. It's just a fun place to hang out. Our social media links are there, our email, and even a link to our Patreon page. Thank you to all patrons who support our channel and help us with a little bit of money each month to keep this content coming. We appreciate you. That's all I have. Zach, you got anything else?
Nope.
He never has anything else. Why do I
That's
keep
not true.
asking?
Sometimes I do.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will talk to you next time.